It's a fun thing.
I'd like to call to order the public meeting of the Lower Moreland Township School District for December 21st, 2021. Mrs. Natter, would you say the Pledge of Allegiance? Are you going to do it, or should I do it?
I got it.
Okay. I'd like to welcome all our visitors via Zoom and also in person. Before the public comments begin, I'd like to remind my esteemed colleagues. That comes after, right?
We have no public comment tonight.
Oh, none? Okay. We have no public comment tonight. I would like to remind my esteemed colleagues that we represent a diversified thoughts and opinions. However, please keep in mind the various opinions, comments, and concerns of all our Lower Moreland residents as we begin our vote tonight. Thank you.
And I would also like to welcome all of our board members here this evening, for those newest board members, for your first public meeting of this evening. And be reminded that with your microphones, just make sure you tap the touchpad, turn them on and turn them off when you're done, so we don't have any interference, and for those that are both here in the audience and on our live stream can audibly hear us. So, Ms. Mayfield, would you take the roll call of the board?
Yes, I can. Mrs. Baker?
Present.
Mr. Berardi?
Present.
Dr. Butler?
Present.
Ms. Cannon?
Present.
Dr. Cohen?
Present.
Mr. Geiger?
Present.
Dr. Lee?
Present.
Mrs. Natter?
Present.
Mr. Steinberg? Dr. David Heiser, everyone's present.
Thank you. I'll take the roll call of the cabinet members and administrators who will also participating in this evening's meeting. Mrs. Galdo?
Present.
Mrs. Drennan?
Present.
Mr. McGuinn?
Here.
Mr. Giordano? Absent. Dr. Hilt?
Here.
Mr. Miles? Here. Mr. Miles is present. Ms. Dilks? Here. Ms. Dilks is present. Mr. Cole? Present. Mr. Cole is present. Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of November 16th, 2021, regular meeting of the recorded or amended of the Lower Moreland Township School District? Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? The motion is carried.
Well, this evening we have two recognitions, and our first is the recognition of Pine Road student poets. So we are very, very excited this evening to introduce Mrs. Ellen Chunky, who will introduce the Pine Road Student Poets, a group of 5 students, to read their poetry that appeared in the 2021-22 issue of the American Poetry Digest. Mrs. Chunky is the Pine Road Librarian.
Good evening. My name is Ellen Chunky. Thank you for the introduction. I am the school librarian at Pine Road Elementary School. I have some copies of this year's and past Young American Poetry Digest if any of the school board members would like to peruse them as we are reading our poetry. Pine Road students have been submitting poetry to the Young American Poetry Digest since 2015. We celebrate National Poetry Month in April, and the Young American Poetry Digest contest is a highlight each year when our Pine Road students get to use their voice to share their own work with an authentic audience. The National Schools Project has an independent panel that selects poetry for inclusion in the published book. Thank goodness that part doesn't involve me, because I'd have a tough time choosing. As it was, I did have to narrow things down, selecting one student from each grade level for tonight's presentation. In the first year that we submitted, we had 10 students whose work was published in the digest. This year, we had 32 students represented on the pages. Of those tonight, we will hear from 6th grader Ella Duchess, 5th grader Macy Levin, 4th grader Jacob Vithian, 3rd grader George Nelson, and 2nd grader Sophia Chen. The students have been practicing reciting their poetry to share with you tonight. Up first, we have Ella Duchess. When she submitted, she was in 5th grade, but now she's at Murray Avenue. I get to claim her for tonight one last time. Come on up, Ella.
The sky is blue as grass is green or clouds white. I hope you see the grassy greens and sky blues and cloud whites that make you your own wonderful self. This is what I see in you.
Macy Levin is an animal expert with 2 guinea pigs named Furry Bee and Charlie, and a dog named Fiona. Though, Mom, she wouldn't mind adding a pony to her menagerie.
Animals. Hyenas are loud, peacocks are proud. Snakes have scales, some ladybugs are males. Cows go moo, owls go hoo. Bears are scary, cats are hairy. Bunnies are cute, some penguins look like they're wearing a suit. Monkeys are brown, some birds live downtown. Dolphins live under the sea, koalas live up in a tree. Kangaroos have a pouch, most dogs enjoy the couch. Horses eat hay, some chicks are born in May. Giraffes are tall, hamsters are small. Animals.
Next up, we have Jacob Vithian. Tonight, Jacob will be sharing 2 poems. The first, The Beach is So Fun, was featured in the book, and the second, My Dog, is one he wanted you to hear about his dog, Roscoe.
My name is Jacob Vithian. I am in 4th grade at Pine Road, and I am reading 2 poems today. The first is titled The Beach is So Fun, and the second is titled My Dog. The beach is so fun. The beach is so fun. You can swim in the ocean or play in the sand. My dog, so cute and special, always making me feel better, sometimes stealing a treat or two, coming to me when I feel blue.
When asked what his favorite part of a snow day is, George Nelson identified sledding as a top activity. George is in 3rd grade at Pine Road, and he'll be reading Snow Day, Fun Day. This is an example of a haiku. A haiku has 5 syllables in the first and last line, and 7 syllables in the second line. The whole poem is 3 lines long.
A snow day, a fun day. Snow days are a fun days. Sleds, a snowball fights, a time with friends. Frozen, happy snow.
I keep getting shorter. Sophia Chen was one of 2 first graders who submitted poetry last year, and both her composition and delivery truly impress.
Hi, my name is Sophia Chen. I'm in 2nd grade at Pine Road School, and my poem's titled The Sense of Nature. The sense of nature. The sun shines The trees with birds burst into joy. The rivers where crickets and frogs creak, where the animals live in the forest I see. The same sounds and the same bugs all around me. I walk in silence. The river glows. Trees are covered in vines. The flowers bloom because it's spring. Yay, all the animals are coming out in the nature where it all began.
You handed it to me. Nice job. Thank you very much for letting our Pine Road poets share tonight with you. We are so proud of them and all of the students who submitted and were accepted for this year's Young American Poetry Digest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Chunky. And thank you, students. Wonderful achievement. Our next presentation is our regularly scheduled Students of the Month for the month of December. And I'd like to invite Mr. Cole, principal of Pine Road Elementary, to the podium to recognize his student.
You're a little shorter than me, Miss Chunky. I'm here to recognize our Student of the Month. I'm seeing he was planning on coming, but I don't see him tonight. Our Student of the Month is third grader Eric Lynn. Eric continually demonstrates all 4 Pine Road pillars. He is kind to his peers and teachers. He is always helping others, and he cares about his friends. Eric makes everyone around him smile and laugh. He works very hard on his schoolwork, participates in his classes, and completes his assignments every single day. Eric is a wonderful student and friend, and seeing Eric in the hallway is always a joy. He has shown tremendous growth while at Pine Road, and his sense of humor is always welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. I'd like to invite to the podium Ms. Dilks, principal at Murray Avenue School, to introduce her recipients.
Okay, it's my pleasure to introduce our Students of the Month for Murray Avenue. Our first student is Joshua Epen. Is Josh in the audience this evening? No? And I know our other student is not able to attend. So I'm going to start by reading the certificate. Hopefully they're joining us virtually this evening from our senator for their acknowledgement. And it reads as follows. Your dedication to academics and school activities and your demonstration of good character are exemplary. For the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the United States of America to grow and succeed, we must all make our best, most heartfelt effort to consistently display these qualities. We are each responsible for helping our community, and you have shown that you are up to the challenge. I join with your teachers and fellow students in recognizing your outstanding citizenship qualities. Congratulations for receiving this much-deserved award. I encourage you to continue to work hard and act as a leader within your community. And I'll just read the 2 nominations from their teachers. Our first student this evening is Joshua Epen. Joshua is a new student to us this year, and his teachers shared the following. As a student, Joshua excels in the classroom. He is proactive, participates often, and holds himself to an extremely high standard. As a person, Joshua is extremely polite, kind, and outgoing. He demonstrates high character and the potential for leadership. It is a pleasure to interact with Joshua on a daily basis. So congratulations, Josh. And our second student who is being nominated this month is Addison Pocatello. And Addison's nomination reads this way. Addison is a student who consistently leads by example. She always comes to class with a positive attitude, actively participates, and demonstrates a strong work ethic. She is helpful to her fellow classmates, showing compassion and respect on a daily basis. Addison shows great interest in the learning process and is such a pleasure to teach. So congratulations to both of these Murray Avenue students.
Mr. Miles, would you please come to the podium to introduce your recipient?
Good evening, Dr. David Heiser and members of the board. Thank you for allowing us time to celebrate our students this evening. I'm very proud to honor our November Student of the Month. Yagut, if you would like to join me while I read your certificate and your nomination. An amazing young person, Yagut Mama Husanova, wonderful young woman, and you'll hear about an article that she had written recently. The teacher who nominated Yagut had this to say: "When I think of students who demonstrate true persistence, appreciation, and gratitude, I think of Yagut. She moved to the United States from Azerbaijan last year. Her story is both interesting and compelling. Yagut has truly flourished in this academic environment, and in addition to her natural ability, she is also largely due to her positive attitude and ability to form connections. She seeks as much opportunity within this environment as she possibly can. She squanders nothing." She wrote an article last year for the American Red Cross essay competition. The issue was called Education and War. Her essay won honorable mention. The ending of her piece reads, "Living without an education is something that is really hard to deal with. If we are studying in school right now and wishing not to go there, we should not forget that there are thousands of children who pray to God to go to school. For certain, Yagut leads each day by her example and is a great reminder to all of us to appreciate what it is in front of us each and every day." Yagut, congratulations. I would like to read this certificate. Lower Moreland High School Student of the Month, Yagut Masahusanova, is recognized for academics, character, and integrity. We congratulate you and have confidence that your future will be equally successful. And also, I'd like to give you a congratulatory letter from Representative Nancy Genst as well. So, Yagut, congratulations, very well deserved.
Thank you, principals, and congratulations to all of our students of the month, for the month of December. Mrs. Baker?
There are no registered public comments for this evening.
Would you like to speak, sir? Yes, would you come down, please, and see Mrs. Mayfield down here? We can. And our first speaker is Lev Yakubov. Sir.
Hello, my name is Lev Yakubov, and I have a child at Pine Road Elementary. First, I want to thank the board members and the administration for everything that you do for our children and community. I wanted to comment that I feel that the health and safety plan should be changed. Currently, masks are mandatory until there are less than 50 cases per 100,000. Unfortunately, we do not know when or if we will ever reach this number in our township. Based on our current plan, we might be mandating masks in schools indefinitely. Masks and social distancing in schools was supposed to be a temporary mitigation strategy that started prior to vaccines being available. There are members on this board that commented that once vaccines are available, they would support masking being an optional, which I believe is what we should do. Now that the state mandate has expired, the school board should allow parents to make the final decision regarding masking by making them optional. There are many schools in our area that have started doing this, including Central Bucks, Council Rock, Neshaminy, Bensalem, Centennial, and Springford, which is in Montgomery County. I believe Springford Area School District is in Montgomery County starting the mask optional policy beginning January 17th. I think we should follow this plan as well. I find it frustrating that Montgomery County is taking such different approaches to COVID than Bucks and other areas, and I feel that Bucks County is prioritizing schools staying open 5 days a week for in-person learning with as minimal disruption as possible. As you recall, Central Bucks, Council Rock, and others opened schools 5 days a week in person in September of 2020, while our school district waited until March or April of 2021. I find that the Montgomery County is making it very difficult for schools to stay open 5 days a week due to its very strict guidelines and protocols, and it's a burden for our schools' resources. I hope that our school board and administrators will prioritize our children and their education and well-being and will push back on any undue burden that the county attempts to impose. Thank you so much for listening, and I wish everyone a wonderful break.
Thank you for your comment. Dr. David Hauser, the report of the Superintendent of Schools.
Yes, thank you. This evening, we are recommending action for a motion to approve the amended health and safety plan as attached. And if you recall, and Dr. Hilt, could you please open that for us? And you'll see there, as Dr. Hilt scrolls down, the 3 areas that are updated from our last meeting that was discussed and gave me authority to include in this and that we need to vote on this evening. One of which is the first, which is the exceptions. They were all, that exception area in section 3 of the expired order, if you recall, allowed for a number of various conditions, one of which was active engagement in athletic competitions and practices for the mask to be, for student athletes to be exempted from that, while not engaged, meaning while standing, sitting on a bench, those types of non-actions that the mask would be back on. And we've seen success with that throughout our middle school, most especially our girls basketball season this year, which has just ended, and our, to date, our high school athletic teams as well. The other component that was added was the locker usage component, which had been excluded for approximately a year and a half due to, as a mitigation strategy for not having crowded hallways and such. And the third area that we also updated inside of this was the test to stay. We didn't discuss this at our last meeting. However, we did include that in votes back in earlier months, and I wanted to apprise all of you of that. I did hear from the county today, and they do plan to continue the test to stay program, and the authority of the school districts to continue that program. However, the draft I saw today, which has not been officially issued, but we were asked to share with our boards, does include an alignment to what our current masking guidance does exist in this current plan, which means in substantial and high, that students would not be allowed, if you're in a mask optional situation, you would not be able to continue with your test to stay program. So they've outlined that, and it is expected to come out very shortly with regard to that. So our suggestion and my recommendation to the board is that these newest updates that we have in there, along with the guidance that we currently have, in order to, again, remove the barriers to keep our kids in school, the testing program, the test to stay program is a prominent program that we've just this week really started to dip into as our case numbers have gone up. And we're fortunate to allow those students that remain asymptomatic, who are unvaccinated, to continue learning in our environment during a time where we're seeing numbers take place. So we have limited students that we do need to send home. Mostly it is simply just those positive cases that are being reported to us that we have to isolate. We're fortunate in that we've seen a decent amount of vaccination, and with the Test to Stay program, it affords us an opportunity to keep all students in as much as possible. So our recommendation is this evening to approve the amended health and safety plan that you see before you.
Do I ask for comments? Any?
You have to bring it out to the floor.
Okay. Do I have a motion to discuss any comments or concerns? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the amended health and safety plan as attached? Second?
Second.
Are there any comments or questions concerning? Mr. Steinberg?
I would have a question. Are there any punitive measures if a knowingly sick child comes to school?
Punitive measures of a knowingly sick child.
If a parent sends a child to school knowing that the child has some underlying condition that's potentially contagious, are there any punitive measures?
Do you mean if they're being sent back in and they're a known COVID positive case that's been reported? We have not had that. Fortunately, we've not had that where we've knowingly had a positive student who's been reported to us and then report back to school. That's kind of a frontline thing where that student really wouldn't make it really too far into the building. Once recognized in that first class, we'd be excluding them and asking them to be excluded. And
Or if a child has exhibited certain symptoms and the parent chose not to have the child tested and sends the child to school, once again, are there any punitive
so if they're
measures?
symptomatic, then they're being sent home and being asked to be tested if they meet the qualifications of multiple symptoms.
So
And
there are no punitive measures, the child is simply sent home.
They are.
So we're basically acting as a babysitting service with the hopes that the child doesn't spread anything that they
So I think what we're operating as is we're operating as a school entity, which is doing a wonderful job, and our community is doing a very, very wonderful job with regard to this process. We have very few incidents to which we have those situations that you're describing occurring. Very, very limited, and our nurses and our administrators on the front lines have really done a nice job in communicating the reasons, the rationale, and the expectations related to keeping our schools open, keeping them operating at a sufficient and safe level. And very, very infrequent that we've had anything across nearly 2 years related to that.
Thank you.
And hence the reason that I think we've stayed safe. We've not seen the link transmission some other schools have seen to date, and we're fortunate we can spread and be at the distancing we're at to be able to eat. And in some of our learning spaces, it's awkward and it's uncomfortable, but it's the rules that we're set up against, and we've been doing a fine job of that, and the teachers have been doing an excellent job. So it's affording us the opportunity to keep schools open and keep schools in and students in our buildings.
I just wanted to clarify. So under the exemption section, the only thing that would be changing is the athletic activity. The medical or religious exemptions would still be dealt with the same way they are now.
Exactly the way they are now, which are under the exemptions. However, we have a child find process. If a parent comes to us, we certainly seek, number one, we'll seek medical documentation, and that becomes part of the 504 child find process to determine whether or not they become eligible to be exempt or to drop to a less restrictive type masking like a shield. So we do have those processes, and those processes have worked well throughout. So the exemption component, while there's a number of things listed on there, we still have processes for all those things. The largest component to it is, like you say, the athletic component, where it gives the exemption during competition.
It's the only one that's being changed under this recommendation.
Well, not necessarily changed, but we're just adopting that section from the mask order. We're adopting what falls under that, but our processes for any of the other exemptions still remain the same in terms of that. Yes.
May I ask a question? So if you're vaccinated, you don't participate in the Test to Stay program?
That's correct. That's correct. You need to be unvaccinated, asymptomatic, to be eligible to participate in the Test to Stay program. If you're vaccinated, you are not a close contact.
Are we able to take each of the items that we're approving, each of those 3 items separately? Because I approve of them, but not the overall plan?
Unfortunately, no. The plan is the plan. All these components are compiled into that, and for the AARP ESSER funds, as our solicitor shared last time, they all fall in and are major components to the plan itself.
Okay, thank you.
So it's an all or nothing kind of thing.
Okay.
Dr. David Heiser, just for clarification, so vaccinated students can test to say asymptomatic. Did you say earlier that Montgomery County requires, for example, there's the gentleman, public comment said there were some schools without mask mandates. Montgomery County, if you're wearing a mask, you can test to stay. If you're not, then you're going to go home.
Correct. There are a few school districts, it's my understanding, a few school districts, just like we have in the past couple of weeks since the order has been removed, have brought their boards together to discuss planning and have approved certain things. The guidance on the test to stay has just recently changed, as I was made aware of today, with regard to how they're going to approach the test to stay and masking combined. So the alignment that we have currently right now, it's expected that that alignment will allow a test to stay to continue.
Okay.
There are some districts in Montgomery County that had approved an optional component to that. Unless changed, they would not be allowed to continue a test to stay program inside of high or substantial transmission levels.
Okay. And another question, you have acquaintances and colleagues in other schools that don't have the requirement right now, that dropped it right when the Supreme Court ruled you didn't have to. What's the experience in the 3 weeks, let's say, since that? Is there a lot of transmission in the schools? Do you hear? Can you just tell us?
To be honest with you, Mr. Geiger, I can't really speak to that. I don't know exactly how things have been. I know, when we speak of counties here, adjacent counties are different, and their guidance has been different all along when it comes to that. So I think it's difficult to compare and to see. I really can't, I wouldn't want to speak to that. I just don't know.
Okay.
In the last couple of weeks since the order has been lifted as to where that currently is. I can tell you data came out today, and as I shared in my communication last week, just as society has been seeing the recent surge, we're starting to see, not starting, we're seeing that surge right now. We have 11 cases at the high school, 16 at Murray, 8 at Pine Road as of today. And that's about as high as we've been since the start of the school year. We're at 265 per 100,000 as an incident rate. We have not broken the 200 barrier since the start of the school year, so we're seeing a significant surge. So it does place us in the high category. And we have a 9.54% positivity rate. So it's just shy of the high range when it comes to positivity rate. So we're seeing that surge, right? You're seeing it in the media and the news right now.
Mm-hmm.
We do speak with Monco OPH every day, or excuse me, every week. Oftentimes, Dr. David Rubin with CHOP also on many of those calls, and much of the information that we're hearing, similar to what you're hearing in media, we're in that surge right now. And, you know, it's going to be an interesting time period, probably through the remainder of this month, next month. The hope would be that we're going to see an earlier drop-off than we did last year as it relates to that. You know, wherever you fall within your masking scope and guideline of thought processes is one thing, some of which is just the simple rules that we have in Montgomery County that, you know, the goal is always to, in my estimation, is remove whatever barriers we can to keep our kids in school. And if we can manage that by keeping masks on, allowing us to still test to stay, and continue to maintain students in our buildings is a win for us. We're going to have cases, right? That's just something that's part of this. We want to manage any transmission, certainly in high and moderate. When our cases are surging, you know, probably not the best of times to remove a mask, since we'll probably have linked and spread transmission taking place at that point, could in our facilities, which would just put us in a whole other period of time, and we don't want to be there. So I think during the time we're in currently, you know, it's prudent to stay the course. The plan has gotten us to where we are today. Certainly masking is not something folks want forever, and I don't think there's an expectation that's going to be forever, but there are some periods of time right now where we're experiencing really high levels of transmission, and we want to make sure we're trying to keep everybody safe and allowing us to stay within the rules that the county has set up for us to be able to continue to test.
I'm almost curious. It's admirable that what we want to do is keep the students in the school. Clearly, that's a benefit to a host of people. And a good many of our local universities have made final exams and programs virtual because they were afraid of keeping people in their facilities. So at the university level, they're doing what they can to limit the community nature of having everyone together, and at the local school districts, we're doing whatever we can to keep everyone under the same roof. It's, to say the least, a little curious.
Well, I think one of the things when you look at colleges and universities, the flexibility that those students have, right? They're all living together. They're traveling together. There's in and outs. There's really the control mechanisms to that are a little different than the control mechanisms that we have. We have confined buildings. We have controlled mechanisms. 7 hours a day, we can create as best a controlled environment and as safe an environment as possible. For college and university students, that's not so much, right? You're in and out of your dorms, you're in and out of your apartments, and you're traveling in and out, and there's just so much transmissibility with that. So it's difficult to, I think, create a controlled environment that allows that. We know that the best education for our students is to be in our schools, and we want them here and to maintain them here. So at the college and university level, I think it's, you know, their challenge is to continue an educational platform in any way, shape, or form. However, if you think about some of the largest universities that are out there, it's almost impossible to do that with the comings and goings of 40,000 people or of 20,000 people, and where they're commuting to and from, coming in and out of, and all the different control measures that we can apply here. So I think it's difficult to compare those two things. I understand why they're doing what they're doing and trying to close out semesters.
But our system here is rather fluid, so if things were to change and that virus presents itself in a greater capacity, we're not locked into what we have presently. We can adapt as we need to accommodate and protect our student base.
Well, again, we're always under the control of the health department when it comes to health and safety, so they would be making the call in that. And I would imagine some of the reported things that you've just seen in the last 24 hours with some schools, and some of that taking place is probably in conjunction with the health department helping to make some of those decisions, whether or not greater spread is happening because of transmission and that they need to close classrooms or offer different learning centers. Right now, we're seeing cases, and we will continue to see cases. They're isolated cases that we trace, and then we quarantine any close contacts that can't test to stay or that are symptomatic. But it's a very controlled nature to what we do that in order to maintain a learning structure inside of our buildings where we know our teachers can deliver the best instruction and we know where our kids can learn the best. So, the plan to date has done that for us, and we expect it to continue. Yes, we're under greater pressure now than we were a month ago. The virus is surging, and we're under greater pressure to do that with all of our students back in the building. Last year, we were running school with over 600 cases per 100,000. But we were in a hybrid setting at that particular time where we had more spacing and so forth. We have all students back now, so it's a little closer spaces, but it's still affording us the opportunity where we're not seeing transmission to date in our buildings or any spread of that, so it's still controlling it, and we hope to continue to do that. And everybody's working very diligently to do that. Our teachers and our administrators are doing amazing jobs. And this is something that may continue into January as we return from the winter break and from the holiday season. So we can expect to be right back into it as we return in early January as well. But again, that controlled environment, and it's with the help of our staff and students to do a few of the things that we've asked them to do. Stay masked during these high times of transmission, keep your distancing, follow the rules like we've set up, and that will continue to maintain our learning systems in school.
And if I could just piggyback on what you said, I think the goal is to keep younger children in school because they're learning how to be learners, as opposed to a college student who really knows their own mode of learning and they can be more independent. I think it just behooves us to keep children in school because that's where the supervision is, and we can keep them in a classroom where they have a teacher in front of them.
Dr. David Heiser, I have a question. So based on our current health and safety plan, when the community transmission falls into the moderate category, which brings us down to 50 per 100,000, then our health and safety plan states that universal masking is recommended and not mandated, correct?
That is correct. So it needs to stay in moderate or low for 2 consecutive weeks.
Okay. So let's assume that happens based on Dr. Rubin's prediction, maybe in February. How does that affect you and the administration's ability to test to stay, close contacts, quarantining students? How do you see that changing your day-to-day duties?
I don't think it changes in any capacity. I think, the idea of metrics is that you're seeing less volume of. And, we were charting that, and I've shared with you where we charted with the number of cases that we were estimating to see. When it gets well over 100, it's kind of out of the estimation as to how many you're going to see in your building. But the volume of and the idea of a metrics-based system in a moderate and a low category of 50 per 100,000, it's a manageable number to where what you expect to see show up in your building of positive cases. We estimate it to be about 1 case across the entire district of active cases if we fall to 50 per 100,000. So nothing will change. We'll continue the same programs that we have. We'd still be allowed to test to stay. There'd be components that we'll have to find out from the test to stay program if anything changes with regard to the distancing that they allow. So if people are unmasked, it's my assumption that it will go down to 6 feet. So we could have, places where we would have children that would be inside of 6 feet, inside the learning spaces for much of the day. However, the metric-based system affords you the opportunity to know that your volume of cases has significantly decreased itself, and the risk has greatly been reduced in regard to the amount of virus that you're going to be seeing at that time inside your building. So it is a little bit of that goes on. I would not imagine that the county, and I haven't seen this from their plan, would allow test to stay to continue without, when you're unmasked, say you're in moderate and people do not have masks, the positive case or the close contact would probably still need to be at 6 feet if they were unvaccinated. So we've not seen that from them at this time yet.
So you just said that at moderate, you anticipate there being one case?
Well, when we ran our numbers throughout the last year, and we were looking at numbers based on the calculations per 100,000, based on that we're 20% of the population in Lower Moreland. And when we looked at cases and where they were starting to hit, when we hit certain numbers based on the incident rate, that's where it started taking place. 1 at 50, 2, 2.5 at 100. Once it gets above 100, it starts to go out of control where we really can't estimate that any longer. It's in such high spread at that particular time in the community. But getting down in the 50 rate is where we really saw for the last year limited cases inside the district.
Would you say you feel just as comfortable at 100 as you do at 50?
At this time, no. I would say I feel more comfortable at 50, having now gone through this a little bit. I did present to all of you back in August a line of substantial and being optional at that level. I think it's prudent to stay the course, most especially since the rules right now are not in the favor of allowing us to do that, right? If we can't test to stay and we're giving the option to take masks off in substantial and we can't test to stay, we're sending a number of students home that are no doubt probably healthy, and we're not really doing our due diligence and trying to remove every single barrier to keep them into the building. If our job is to remove all the barriers that we can to keep them actively engaged in the buildings, then my suggestion is to certainly not move to substantial.
And the test to stay is only available for children who became a close contact in school, is that correct?
That's correct.
So if students become a close contact, household contact, they're not eligible for a test to stay?
That's correct.
Is that our rule or is that the county's rule?
So that's our rule right now. The county is allowing you to expand it as much as you want. We just feel right now we don't have the capabilities to be able to do all the household contacts that have come, because most of our contacts are coming out of household contacts with regard to it. So it's not allowed us the opportunity to do that. We could also increase to symptomatic students, to vaccinated asymptomatic students if we wanted to. But again, the capabilities to go beyond and develop us into a test center while we're still trying to be an educational center, there's a balance that's needed in that. We feel like what we're doing right now with the test to stay, with anybody that's close, that's unvaccinated, that's asymptomatic, is doing the job it needs to do, and we're sending home the positive students and keeping any student in school that we can.
So if a student is vaccinated but becomes a close contact at home, they still have to quarantine?
Vaccinated close contact at home, if they're vaccinated, they're exempt. They're not a close contact.
At all?
Right.
I believe the CDC guidance says that they're asymptomatic.
And asymptomatic.
At the same time, testing is encouraged 5 days after exposure.
Right. We are encouraging, our nurses do encourage any vaccinated student that would be a close contact by definition had they not been vaccinated. We are recommending to our families that they, in 3 to 5 days, get a test. And if that test is positive, we will need to know that. The county's not requiring that, and it's not a requirement. We are saying to families to go ahead and do that because vaccinated students can become positive, and we're encouraging them that that's what the county is recommending that they do. And we were also watching those students to see if they turned symptomatic at all.
I'm sorry, where are our numbers now versus where they were some months ago?
Our numbers
you
are.
addressed that.
I did. Our numbers are up. There right now we have 11 positive cases at the high school, 16 at the middle school, and 8 at the elementary school. And our incident rate is 265 per 100,000. So that's going up significantly over the past couple of weeks. We were maintaining. We'd flow under 100, between 50 and 100. We'd flow in the low 100s is where we were somewhat established throughout the fall.
So as our numbers go up, we take other measures because our numbers have gone up. Are we being more reactionary or proactive?
Well, I think we've developed a plan that is very, very proactive in nature to whatever situation that has occurred. We've now included test to stay as another mitigation strategy, which allows us more assurance in knowing who is and who is not, and allowing some of our close contacts that would have in prior times gone home, having and most of which were healthy, never turning positive. We're now able to keep those students in the schools.
At what point do we say some of the team sports should be curtailed because the numbers got too large?
Well, we would curtail sports if we're starting to see spread and transmission throughout teams. Just because numbers are high does not necessitate a need to have to shut down programs. Cases are, we're a microcosm of society, right? When cases are high in society, we're going to be high as a component of society. However, the plans that we have and we've developed have been successful in maintaining, just like they have been in our in-person instruction, our extracurriculars as well. So we plan to continue those until we can't, meaning we've developed into something that is unmanageable. We've started to see spread, or we've started to see other conditions that make it unsafe for us.
So we continue with the sports.
And choir and band and all the other extracurriculars, theater, everything that we've been doing, we continue, and they all follow our same health and safety plans, and really have done a nice job with those.
So I've said this before, if I have two students wrestling each other, and they're literally exchanging saliva because they're wrestling together, and then they have to go sit on the stands and put a mask on, isn't that not the transmission of iron?
Well, I'm not sure what's so ironic in terms of our wrestling program, to which we've had 0 cases throughout the last 2 seasons, which we've taken all the mitigation strategies that we've applied to all the other sports, and we've been highly, highly successful. There is risk in anything you do in life every day. And we are taking a very, very strong approach to our plan. We're emphasizing the various things. We're re-emphasizing them during high areas of surge and transmission right now. And the plan is working. It's maintained. It's doing exactly as it's intended to do. It's not going to keep the virus out of our buildings. Our intentions are to make sure that it's not being transmitted and that we're not creating spread in order to optimize the opportunities for all of our extracurriculars and for all of our in-person activities for instructional and learning purposes.
Thank you.
Scott, I have one last question for you. So a student is a household contact who ends up not testing positive or actually testing negative. What is our school's policy for when they can return to in-person instruction?
No, it's not our policy. That's governed by the Montgomery County Office of Public Health. So they need to stay home for 7 days. They, on the 7th day, can receive a negative. If they receive a negative PCR test, they can return to the building on the 8th day.
That's our policy?
Correct, Cheryl? Yes, guidelines by Montgomery County.
Okay, because I was given 2 different bits of information this week from 2 different nurses.
Okay.
So I think we need to get on the same page.
Well, you want to share that with me, and I can...
We originally were told that it needed to be 14 days from the 10-day isolation quarantine of the positive cases. So once the positive cases were done their 10-day, the negative student had to do an additional 14 days. So it's 24 days from the first first day of symptoms.
Cheryl, can you clarify that?
Yeah, it's household close contact. That's correct. It is longer if you're at household close contact.
Cheryl, can you turn your microphone on, please?
Household close contact is different. I apologize. They have to quarantine longer because they're not able to isolate away from. It's not like you come in contact with a sick person and then, you're away from them, and so you can measure the time, the date on which they were exposed. So household close contact is continuously being exposed in theory. So that's why the quarantine period is longer for household close contact. So those are Montgomery County offices.
So then that's not our policy.
Well, I wouldn't get into policy. Policy is what you make as far as board members.
Okay.
So the procedures are what we follow with the Montgomery County Office of Public Health. If that's there with household contacts,
right,
then yes, that's what we follow with regard to that. What I gave you would have been a close contact in our buildings, which is on the 7th day. If a student is sent home on the 7th day, if they have a negative PCR test, they may return on the 8th day. Household contacts is a longer period of time, and that's really just due to the lack of separation that the counties determine in households that can't be achieved.
Do we have data on how many of the currently positive students are vaccinated? Are we collecting that data?
It's my no, that, I'll have to check. I don't have an answer for you on that. If we are or we're not. My assumption is, no, I don't want to make an assumption on that. So I'll have to find that out for you.
I understand. I'm only asking because I know several vaccinated people who have had COVID recently.
Yep.
The vaccine doesn't appear to be preventing the spread, but rather, the symptoms when you get the disease. So the fact that the vaccinated aren't included in the test to stay program doesn't make that much sense to me.
It doesn't from a standpoint if that's what we want to do all day, right? So I think it's the volume of, when we initially started this, we did not include the vaccinated folks inside of this. And it does appear that, like you said, the vaccinated the spread on this is going to be impacting vaccinated students as well. So we can make a decision whether we're going to include them in the protocol. Our implementation plan right now does not include vaccinated students.
Or household contacts.
Or household contacts.
I would think that if our goal is to try to keep as many kids in school as possible, we would want to try to consider the test to stay for as many students as we could handle.
Yes, I may have to come back to you for much more personnel in order to do that.
I think it would be silly if we don't have any, if our test to stay program is not being utilized because that week you didn't have that many close contacts in school, but we did have several household contacts, to say, well, you don't qualify for the test to stay program because you were a household contact when we had very few close contacts in school. I just think, almost should be I don't want to say first come, first served basis, but just address as many as we can handle. If our goal is to keep as many kids in school as possible.
Right. And I can't tell you right now the volume of which we could handle. And I don't know that I'm going to know that.
Okay.
So if we open that gate open, that we're going to be testing household contacts, I think it's going to be an incredible amount
Okay.
of individuals that we're going to have to test.
Okay.
Dr. David Heiser, I just want to make a clarifying remark about vaccines. Clearly, they are one of the most effective strategies we have as part of our layered mitigation to prevent the spread of COVID. They are by no means 100% effective against preventing the spread of COVID. They are almost that effective against minimizing people's risk for severe illness or death. Yes, we're seeing more breakthrough cases. Most of our students currently won't qualify for a third booster, so there'd be very few students who would actually qualify as being fully vaccinated according to recommendations right now. As far as testing, clearly the more students who are exposed that you could test, that's a further layer of mitigation and a further way to lower risk. I'm sure there are some limitations with regards to the number of tests that are available. I don't know if anyone's tried to find a Binax Now test out in the community, but they're really hard to be found. I don't know if we have an inventory of how many we have.
So we do have some. We've run into inventory shortages across the county right now. And, a number of schools who have promised a test to stay are now not able to test some of the students due to lack of the volume. We have been promised that they are coming. Some of those that were given to us expired already and are not eligible to be used. And so the supply should be, over the winter break, we should be getting some repurposing of some newer. So we can move toward those two additional. We would have to supply a new implementation plan for the Test to Stay program to include literally all individuals. Then essentially it's involving anybody that might be exposed, would qualify as a contact to be tested, including all of those that are in close contact and household contacts. That would include things that happen in the community of contacts and such. So if that's a position that we want to go down, we could certainly approve the plan tonight, and we could change our implementation plan and get approval from the county sometime during the winter break, probably to start that sometime in the new year.
Dr. David Heiser, how would we make that known if we run out of tests, if we don't have enough?
Well, we continue to update the county weekly. There's pickups weekly that we have a system that we go to pick. We actually have to go to and go pick those up every week and resupply. So we have a process with our liaisons as how we do that. The problem has become the lack of supply.
How would we make that known to parents if it kind of vacillates each week, if we don't, according to supply and demand? How would they know what the procedure was each week if we did that?
Well, we would continue to test until we don't have any tests any longer, and then when we run into a supply issue to which we wouldn't have any tests, we unfortunately wouldn't be able to test those individuals and have to communicate that to those parents, and that those students would have to be excluded for those time periods.
So in all reality, we could run out of tests and not be able to test anybody if we include more.
Yes, we could run into some situations with that. I hope we don't. And it sounds like the county's committed to this, although they're beholden upon manufacturers as well and the supply chain.
Do you perceive that happening, or do you feel that there should be a pretty consistent supply?
To be honest with you, I don't want to predict the future. I think what we can do is begin a program that would include more contacts and students. There's going to be some pressure points to it. I don't know what that means in terms of personnel. I'm going to have to take it back to my team to find out what we functionally would be able to handle, and I can get back to you at the work session. We will also talk with the county about supply and see where they project the future to be with regards to this. Yeah, that's about the best we can do right now. I just don't know, based on the surge that we're seeing and the amount of expected contacts that we would probably be testing over the next 6 weeks is probably going to be a large amount of individuals.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Cannon?
I'd just like to say I'm not necessarily in support of adding the vaccinated. I was just trying to point out that I think that the program is a little flawed, and I feel like our hands are tied by the county, and we're sort of like unable to change our plan because of the procedures that they have in place that we have to follow. I just wanted to address what Mr. Geiger said. I work in Central Bucks School District. In Bucks County, the guidelines are different. We've been mask optional since last Monday. In all of Montgomery County now is currently in a high transmission rate. In Bucks County, there are only 6 counties even in moderate, and most of the districts there are unmasked. So that's just something to think about. I think that parents, there are parents, one who spoke tonight and other parents who have reached out, that would choose to send their child to school without a mask still, and I think that we have to, at some point in the near future, think about their choices as parents.
Could you clarify, how many schools, did you say 6 are in moderate
6
counties?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Do you mean towns?
You mean
6, yes, townships, I'm sorry.
Dr. David Heiser, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it's pretty clear in the absence of a mask mandate, the number of students that we would have to be testing, quarantining, et cetera, would be significantly higher, particularly with 35 cases.
I would estimate that to be.
With 35 cases already among students.
Right. I would imagine, because those students have, for the most part, many of those students have touched our building in some capacity without having some sort of longer break. Now, when we enter the winter break, I'm expecting that we'll get some reported cases, but those students won't necessarily have touched our buildings, so there won't be any contact tracing needed and things of that nature. I do expect the first week, probably the second week back, is where we're going to see more of the influx of cases. The first week back, we'll probably have a lot of reports, but those students will have stayed home, and we'll have been able to communicate for them to stay quarantined. The second week is where some students may come back that first week unknowingly and so forth, and that's where we might see a larger surge in some positive cases in the district, and it's kind of expected as more people gather and such, and it appears the transmissibility of the Omicron variant is pretty high, so.
This also speaks to what Mr. Steinberg was asking about, that we can only control what's happening in our schools. There's no mandate outside of school that anyone has to wear a mask anywhere they go. So we can't be certain that that spread isn't occurring in other places.
We also can't mandate vaccines.
Oh, yes, I know.
So I guess if there's no other further conversation, I think a couple things I heard this evening. My recommendation is still to move forward with approving the plan as stated. It makes the few amended adjustments that all of you had talked about at our last meeting. I will certainly speak with my team about the increased capacity to be able to test other significant individuals moving forward, and there would be household contacts and any vaccinated students that we would deem otherwise, had they not been vaccinated, we would test them. Had they not been vaccinated, would have been a close contact. Something that we're suggesting to parents right now in 3 to 5 days for them to go and get tested. And that's what the county is recommending but you're suggesting that we would test those students as well. I think that was something, Ms. Cannon, you mentioned.
I wouldn't support including that. More so, I was saying that like the vaccinated can still spread it. So I feel like if we're assuming that we're testing to stay unvaccinated and partially vaccinated students who are asymptomatic, but a vaccinated student who's asymptomatic could also spread it, why would they not be included?
And really, it's because of the county guidelines right now. So it's accurate that that can take place, but it's also due to the nature of the volume of testing. Do we want to turn into a true testing center of all? If they're vaccinated and asymptomatic, that's the guidance that we've been given by the County of Health.
I'm just saying that we don't know that they wouldn't spread it still.
No, we don't.
They
It doesn't
definitely
make
could.
sense.
They definitely could. I mean, it sounds like a resource issue. We don't have unlimited testing. We don't have unlimited personnel. But vaccinated people can certainly spread the disease. I think the chances are less than unvaccinated people, but they can certainly still spread the disease. And certainly with this variant, it may be even more substantial than we think. So in the ideal world, if we had unlimited resources and personnel, I would be testing everybody after an exposure so that they come back to school. I think we're facing a particularly risky time after holiday break where people are traveling and being exposed to people around the country. We don't have the capacity to test every student prior to coming back into school. There are school districts, private school districts, cities in the country that are doing that and delaying the start of in-person school after testing the student body. I'm not proposing we do that, but it does sound like a resourcing issue is a component of that decision.
And just
If we
the,
have students from another school come in for a program, be it a sporting program or an academic program or something where we have guests from another school come in, do we look at their health and safety plan before we allow them in our facility?
They are required to follow our health and safety plan. We've determined that health and safety plan is safe for our students, so they need to meet our guidelines when it comes to that. So the athletic director's talking well in advance of that for planning purposes with regard to masking, with regard to procedures.
So while they're here, they follow our guidelines.
That's correct.
But when they're outside, they follow their guidelines.
That's correct. There's only so much we can control. And when we go off-site to go visit and play competitions at other sites, we follow theirs, but to the greater extent, we need to follow our plan as well as any additional things that they too require. There are some places that we go that a mask might be required to play the sport, to be engaged in the sport, and don't allow for the exemption with regard to it. There are other places that we go that masks are completely optional. However, we fall back to our plan in those cases. We take on the most conservative approach that we can in alignment with our planning. So if we go to a mask optional environment, which there are plenty of schools that we have been and are continuing to go to, we still follow our masking procedure and our health and safety plan as it relates.
So if our level dips to a number 2 out of the 4 programs, and we have another school come in, and they're at a level 4, we don't preclude them from coming in. We just say, while you're here, you have to follow our guidelines, but we know they're at a 4 and we're at a 2. That doesn't give us any cause for concern?
I think the entire pandemic gives us cause for concern, but again, there are only so many factors that we can control with regard to that. So we still require our health and safety plan to be followed. And again, as we will follow anybody else's, as long as it meets the minimum guidelines of what we have in our plan as well. We're not going to a mask optional environment now while we and our health and safety plan guides what we have in our community. We apply the necessary masking that we need to do at that site while on site.
Thank you.
Are there no further comments, questions, or concerns? If there are no further comments, questions, or concerns, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Personnel?
Ms.
Do I have-
Mayfield, vote reflects 7 to 2. Mr. Steinberg, no. Ms. Cannon, no.
Personnel, do I have a motion to, I'm sorry, do I have a motion to approve? Sorry. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the 2021-2022 personnel motions as attached? Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just, there are no changes from the work session, correct?
Ms. Gauda? There are none.
Okay. Thank you.
If there are no further comments, questions, or concerns, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried.
In this
Correct.
next item, there are 2 additions to this. And Mrs. Baker, if you allow Ms. Gaudo to please share those.
Sure.
Yes, since the work session, we have added Art Club, Jana Jolly at Murray Avenue, and Memory Books, Savannah Shields, also at Murray Avenue.
Did these go under the same motion?
Now you can take it to a motion.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the professional meetings as attached?
So moved.
Second.
Any further comments or questions? If not, let's move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Curriculum?
And in this next item, we have in athletics.
Yes, so we have one additional item for high school basketball JV girls. Celia Cordiff is new.
Oh, I thought we were doing all together. Oh, okay. Do I have a motion to approve the 2021-2022 athletic extracurricular contract stipends as attached?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? If not, move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Do I have a motion to approve the Employee Assistance Program agreement with CareBridge Corporation for 36 months for the period of March 1st, 2022 to February 28th, 2025 as attached?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? If not, move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Do I have a motion for the approval to join the Montgomery County Recruitment Outreach Initiative of the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit at an annual fee of $600 as attached?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions? If not, move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Do I have a motion for the approval to add additional security personnel for the remainder of 2021 2022 school year to be split between the Lower Moreland High School and the Murray Avenue School.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?
I have a comment. Actually, a
Marty?
question. I think it was brought to your attention, Scott, but I guess I would bring it publicly up. Did we give consideration to hiring a second SRO as opposed to bringing in temporary help? Or is that something we did not explore?
So I've had conversations with the chief of police and also Mr. McGuinn from a budgetary standpoint. We're not recommending that for the balance of this school year. We believe additional security personnel will help fill the voids of what we need with student management right now. And again, I shared some of those things in terms of the amount of students that we have out and about in buildings and where they are due to the spacing needs. I did speak with the chief about considering that as a possibility down the road, much of which would be a consideration budgetarily. Certainly more presence, and we've had success with our original SRO program. The need right now is more based in simple student management that does not develop into what we believe we need a police officer for. And we will assess that and bring that to the board's attention if we feel we need to go down the path at a future time.
Thank you.
If there are no further comments, questions, or concerns, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Do I have a motion to approve the professional meetings as attached under curriculum?
So moved.
Second.
Any further comments, questions, or concerns? If not, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Do I have a motion to approve the ESSER funds, ARP ESSER, 7% set-asides, $50,000 for the amount and $50,766 as attached? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions or concerns? Dr. Bartlett, do you have a comment or question? Oh, okay. Okay. If there are no further comment, questions, or concerns, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. There's nothing under diversity? Okay.
Motion to approve building and facilities.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the application for the use of the building and facilities as attached?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
If there are no further comments, questions, or concerns, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Was it? Al, did you say something? Oh, okay. Okay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Under Buildings and Finance, do I have a motion to approve the financial reports as attached? Do I have a second?
Second.
Are there any further comments, questions, or concerns? We'll move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Do I have a motion to approve the accounts payable checklist as attached?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
If there are no further comments, questions, or concerns, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Do I have a motion to approve the wire transfer list dated November 30th, 2021 in the amount of $309,555.50 $2,221.15.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further comments, questions, or concerns? If there are no further comments, questions, or concerns, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? One abstention by Mr. Steinberg. The motion is carried. Do I have a motion to approve the 2021-2022 budget transfers for the technology equipment leases as per attached?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further comments or questions or concerns? If not, move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Do I have a motion to approve the 2020-2021 audit report as presented by Malley LLP as per the attached?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments, questions, or concerns? If not, move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And all opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Do I have a motion to approve the adoption of the Resolution 2021-2022-1 in accordance with Act 1 Taxpayer Relief Act to not exceed 2022-2023 Act 1 index of 3.4% as per the attached? Do I have a second?
Second.
Are there any comments, questions, or concerns? If not, move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried.
Mrs. Baker, item
I'm
G
sorry.
is a new item that we've added, and I would ask that you take a motion, and then Mr. McGuinn will update the board in the discussion in regards to this.
So motion to discuss? Do I have a motion to discuss?
Nope,
No.
just a motion to approve, and then we'll take
Okay.
discussion.
Do I have a motion to approve the extension of the 2017 Ford Transit van lease for 1 year through May 24th, 2023, as per the attached? The monthly lease amount will remain the same.
So
Mr.
moved.
McGuinn?
Ms. Baker, you actually need a motion and a second before I can explain.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Second.
Are there any further comments, questions, or concerns for Mr. McGuinn?
Mrs. Baker, just very quickly, I appreciate the board allowing us to add this to the agenda. We reached out to our vendor who we currently have our transit van, 10-passenger van that has become very highly used and very in demand. And projecting forward, as the lease was to be ending in May of 2022, the state of the market of vehicles right now is very tight. So I reached out to our contact at Quigley Chevrolet and asked if they would extend the lease for another year. It was originally a 5-year lease. We're asking to extend it another 12 months. The van currently has approximately 17,000 miles on it. It's in very good condition based on the lease price and the availability of assets. Projecting forward into May of 2022, we thought it prudent to extend this lease for another year, so we're asking the board's approval.
Mr. McGuinn, does that change the warranty, anything like that, because it's going an additional year?
No, we're still covered under a general lease warranty. And again, the mileage piece is something that we're not going to hit. And again, for the most part, the van has served very, very well. And again, it's very much in high use. We move a lot of technology between buildings. We move food product between buildings when necessary, and certainly small groups of teams for smaller trips we've definitely used.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McGuinn, do you know what the buyout was for that? Was that a consideration to just purchase it?
It was, the buyout was pretty hefty, and it's something that was not in our budget. The lease amount certainly is in our budget. And again, moving forward, you never know what the market's going to be, but if we enter into a 4-year lease, I would feel a little bit more apt to look for a buyout as opposed to a 5-year lease.
Assuming that if district employees are driving this van, not a school bus driver, that they're covered insurance-wise and...
That is correct. So we have any school district employee or coach, all of which have to be, their driver record authorization needs to come through my office. And we do a 3-year look back through the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation to see if there are any violations. If there are any violations, they are not permitted to drive the van, and that is done through Ms. Mayfield, and that is done before any of our employees can drive that van. And that is not only a good practice, but it's an insurance requirement each year.
Are there any further comments, questions, or concerns? If not, move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Student Services. Do I have a motion to approve the renewal of the pool council agreement with Sweet, Stevens, and Katz and Williams for the 2021-2022 school year at a cost of $7,500 as attached?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments, questions, or concerns? Mrs. Cannon, do you have a question? Okay. If there are no further questions, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Do I have a motion to approve the agreement between the district and Keystone Freedom Academy to provide educational services via the Individualized Education Program for student number 8,639 for the remainder of the 2021-2022 school year at a cost of $211.50 per day as attached?
So moved.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Are there any comments, questions, or concerns? All those, if not, let's move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Technology, there are no further actions. School Board, do I have a motion to approve the teacher field trip request applications as attached?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any further comments, questions, or concerns?
I have a question, Mrs. Baker.
Mr.
On
Geiger?
the Penn State trip, it looks like the school bus is leaving Friday, January 7th at 2:45, coming back Saturday, the 8th at 6 p.m. Is that right? It doesn't say anything in here about where the students are staying.
Yeah, they have hotel reservations, which they're staying. I can get you that information. I'm looking at the agenda past it. Look on 1 second. I will need to get you that information.
Okay.
It is a hotel reservation that we do have.
Yeah.
My apologies for not having that.
That's okay. I would just ask that any future overnight stays, that
Yeah,
that be part of the
typically is. My
submission, yeah.
apologies.
Okay.
Are there any further comment, questions, or concerns? If not, move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Do I have a motion to approve this? Do I motion to approve the Sweet Stevens Katz Williams SSKW LLP agreement for fees, costs, and expenses for the legal services for the 2022-2023 fiscal year as attached, in addition to a copy of the W-9 form as attached?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Are there any further comments, questions, or concerns? If not, move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried.
Mrs. Baker, can we go back to item B?
Okay, did I forget that?
Yeah,
Sorry.
we just went over that, so we can go back and take item B.
Okay. So I have a motion to approve the application for the extracurricular and co-curricular activities as attached.
So moved.
I have a second?
Second.
Are there any further comments, questions, or concerns? If not, move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Do I have a motion to approve Dr. James Lee for the Eastern Center for the Arts and Technology representative for the unexpired 3-year term ending in November 2022?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further comments, questions, or concerns? If not, move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you, Dr. Lee, for volunteering.
Pleasure.
Committee reports. Do I have a legislative?
I have just one update. On December 10th, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court struck down the mask mandate imposed by the Wolf administration, relinquishing the authority back to local school boards.
Eastern Center for Arts and Technology.
Yes, I had the pleasure of attending the joint operating committee meeting the day after our last meeting. I agree, it's a beautiful facility. Renovations were state of the art. They have a very impressive robotics lab, first thing that you see walking in. The two main orders of business, I think, were to approve the hiring of a full-time nurse, as well as, I think, a data specialist. And the last area of renovation is their welding area, which is their most popular program, and that's what they hope to achieve in the next cycle. The highlight for me was hearing about their Student of the Month, Hatboro Horsham Senior, who's been volunteering in various fire departments in the area. He's in their Protective Services program, and it was just a very impressive story. He saved someone's life at Gettysburg. He spent hours on end helping people during Hurricane Ida. So it was just really good to see the supportive teacher who was there in person to give a testimonial for this particular student. So, thanks.
Thank you. MCIU.
Nothing to report.
Technology. Thank you. Technology.
Our next meeting is January 13th, so I'll report back in January.
Safe Schools. Thank you.
Not related to our Safe Schools Committee, but related to our 3 buildings, and certainly over the last couple of weeks, on the heels of the tragic Michigan shooting, we have made sure and reassembled our threat assessment teams, going over procedures and protocols with each of them at each of our buildings. Principals have spoken to staff, in particular, about processes and procedures and protocols, just firming up a lot of what we already do, but certainly in reaction at any time, it brings into context the need to have to go and reinforce that.
Thank you. Ms. Mayfield, is there any correspondence?
No.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything the board would like to discuss? Any item?
I'd just like to thank Mr. McGuinn for the job he did with the audit.
Thank you.
I would like to just bring up one point, and going back to the health and safety plan, I know Mr. Berardi, you brought up the ability for us to test household contacts. So I went back into the guidance and I actually emailed, and it is only designated to in a school setting. Students identified as a close contact exposed in a school setting. This does not include close contacts exposed at home, outside of the school setting, and community exposures. So they are not eligible for this. I think what and I probably mistakenly thought this, I think one of the things that some school districts are doing as a courtesy, if they're able to manage it, is some are allowing some of those students to come and just get an initial test. However, they're not part of the test to stay as it relates. And much of which goes back to that component Mrs. Gaudo said, that while they're still in the household and while they may have been negative on that day, the chance of exposure is still there because it's taking place inside the household itself. So those students household contacts would not be eligible students that we could test in the program.
Do I need a motion to adjourn? Dr. David Hauser? Do I need a motion to adjourn?
You do.
Okay, because it's not on here. Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
Second. Meeting is adjourned. The next scheduled meeting is the work session for Tuesday, January 4th, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the Lower Moreland High School Auditorium located at 555 Red Lion Road, Huntington Valley, 19006.